There is a way of taking your hand back that is worse than being hit. She did it the way you set down something wet, carefully, and without ever once looking at where it landed. Hello, you. It's late where you are, isn't it? I can tell by the way you didn't put a light on. Come here. Head down, phone on the pillow, that's it. If this is the first time you've found me, go back. Part 1's under this. You'll want it first. Everyone else, here's where we were. 11 months I've worked for Harriet Byrne. 1 bench, 2 feet of air, and every Friday I ring a florist and order flowers for the woman she's been with for 9 years. 3 weeks ago she stopped telling me what to write on the card, and on the 42nd Friday I turned round and she was watching my mouth, and she held it for 4 seconds, past the point where either of us could call it accidental. Now, tell me what your window looks like tonight. Not your city, your window. What's out there? What's the last light still on? Put it in the comments and I'll come and read every single one. And if you want me back next Friday, there's a button under this. It's free. It just means I get to keep you. Now, where did we stop? It was a Monday in June, 8:10. Foley was on the stairs with a box in his arms, and he was telling us he was going away for the summer. Foley's the other half of the studio. Bookbinder, 51, deaf in his left ear. He comes up those stairs good ear last, so what you get is the back of a man and a stream of words already 3 sentences in. 6 weeks, he was saying. Maybe more, depending on his sister. I was still in the doorway with my coat on. You have to understand what that room is. Top floor, north-facing, no sun ever, because sun eats paper. 1 long bench, 2 chairs. And me, since my 2nd week, being the calendar and the post and the supply orders for 2 people who make torn things whole again. 3 of us in it. Then 2. He put the box down on the end of the bench and started going through his pockets for the keys, and he was still talking. Portugal. A sister. Somebody's roof. I looked at the bench. There were 2 cups on it. Now, I've told you about the cups. 11 months of one. Hers. Harriet Burns, the conservator, the woman I work for. 38, sleeves buttoned at the wrist. Made for one. Drunk by one. And I keep saying 11 months. It went to 12 at the start of June. I have not once managed to update the number, and I'm the calendar, and I check everything, and I still can't do it. So 11 months is what you're getting. Then last week a 2nd cup appeared on my side of the lamp, cold as the bench it stood on, and nothing was said about it. By either of us. Ever. Cold every morning since. Made early, left to die, and I drank it standing up because sitting is 16 inches closer. I went and put my hand round it while Foley was talking about a roof. Warm. Not hot. Warm the way a thing is when it's been standing 4 minutes. Maybe 5. Which meant it had not been made at 6 in the morning for reasons of her own. It had been made for the sound of me on the stairs. I want to be honest about what I did next, because it's small and it's not flattering. I flattened my palm against the side of that mug like a person taking a reading. Deliberately. Checking my working. And I did the arithmetic standing there, the way I do everything. 4 minutes is 1 flight of stairs and a coat coming off. 4 minutes is somebody hearing the street door 2 floors down and getting up. It is not a kindness you can do by accident. You have to be listening for a person to do it. 11 months of cold tea. And on the morning we found out we'd be alone in that building for the rest of the summer, it was warm. I don't think she planned that. I want to be fair to her. I think a woman got up when she heard the door, and did not ask herself why, the same way I do not ask myself why I take the bus that gets in 22 minutes early. Then I looked up, and she had not looked at me once. She was watching Foley. Absolutely still, both hands flat either side of the work, the way she gets when somebody's saying something she'll have to plan around. She has a face like a closed door in a good building. You can tell it's well made, and you can tell it isn't opening. 6 weeks, he said again. You'll manage. We'll manage. 2 words, flat as a verdict read out. And Foley laughed, because he laughs at everything, because he has never once noticed a single thing happening in a room, and he said the thing that has stayed with me all summer. Stay late, Nell. She won't eat unless someone's still there. He meant it kindly. He means everything kindly. He is the reason there is a story at all, and he has no idea he's in one. I said, right. 6 weeks. Because I read things back. It's what I do instead of speaking. Then he found the keys and did the split ring on the bench, right there, with his thumbnail, and it took him about a minute because his thumbnail's no good for it. 3 keys on that ring. Street door and studio came off. His own front door went back in his pocket. And the mug was cold again by the time I got to it, because I'd stood in a doorway doing sums instead of drinking it. 10 days later, a Thursday, 8:45, and there were 2 people left in a building that used to hold 3. 10 days, and neither of us had said it out loud. That's the thing I can't make sound like anything. Foley, the bookbinder, the other half of the studio, currently in Portugal fixing a roof, had walked out and left the 2 of us in a top-floor room with 1 bench and 1 lamp and 6 weeks. And we had not mentioned it. Not once. Not as a joke, not as logistics, not as, quiet, isn't it? I kept waiting for it, every morning. 1 sentence to turn a fact into a subject you could hold. It never came, and after about day 6 I understood that it wasn't going to, and that the not saying was now the loudest thing in the room. What happened instead was the glasses. Harriet's reading glasses. Harriet Byrne, the conservator, the woman I work for. She uses them for close work, and she is vain about neither the glasses nor the close work. They lived, for 11 months, on her side of the lamp. And then one evening they didn't. They were on mine. I came in the next morning and there they were, folded, on my side of the lamp, at about the angle you'd put down something you were finished with. I cleaned them. I didn't decide to. That's what I'd like on the record. My hand did it while I was thinking about something else, and by the time I noticed, they were clean and I was holding them, and there was nowhere to put them except back down. By the 4th morning it was a routine, and neither of us had said a word about it, and I'd bought equipment. That's the detail I've never said to anybody. The cloth on the bench has paste on it. Wheat starch, cooked fresh every morning, gets into everything. No good for glass. So I went into the chemist by the bus stop and bought a cloth. 90 pence, yellow. Kept it in my coat pocket. I did not have 90 pence spare that week. Because here's the position, and it hasn't changed. I'm 25. 9-month rolling contract, renewed at the discretion of 2 people, one of whom was now in another country for the rest of the summer. 4 years left of paying off the diploma that got me in that door. 4 studios in this city do what we do. I wrote to all 4, and 1 wrote back, and it was Foley, and he only wrote back because somebody he knew had died and left him more work than he could hold. There are 2 keys to that building. I have one of them. So, Thursday, 8:45, 4th morning, and I got as far as asking. She was at the bench and I was cleaning them, and I heard myself say it in the flattest voice I own. Why do you leave these here? And she reached over and took them out of my hands and put them on. That's all. That's the whole answer. She needed them, she got them, and the question was closed by a woman's arm crossing 18 inches of bench. I stood there with my 90 pence cloth in my hand. But I'd seen something, and it took me another day to understand it. She didn't check them. Nobody puts on glasses without checking them. You hold them up, you tilt them at the lamp, you find the smear. Everybody does it. She'd done it every morning for 11 months. She'd stopped. You only stop checking a thing when you've started trusting it, and she had not said 1 word to me about any of this, and I had not said 1 word to her. We worked until 6. The humidity unit clicked every 11 minutes on the wall, correcting itself, the way it does. Then she stood up and folded them, and put them down on my side of the lamp on her way out the door. Friday, 4 minutes to 11. I was standing at the end of the bench with my back to the room, and the florist's number already up on the screen. You remember the confirmation email. 4 minutes past 11, every Friday. Your order has been received. I've had 44 of them. That one I read about 9 times, standing in a room with her, and I couldn't have told you a single word it said. Let me back up. The standing order goes out every Friday at 11. 12 stems, no lilies, signed with the initial. It goes to Iris. That's Harriet Byrne's partner of 9 years. Harriet's the conservator, the woman I work for. Iris is the one who works with children learning to walk again. Flowers reach her hallway by 2:30, and 3 weeks ago, Harriet stopped dictating the message, said, "You know what to put," mid-cut, without looking up, and handed me 4 words a week of somebody else's tenderness, the way you'd hand somebody a bag while you find your keys. Same morning, she watched my mouth the whole way through the call. 4 seconds of it, held past the point where either of us could call it accidental. So, I performed it. I stood further from the bench than I needed to. I turned side-on rather than fully away, which is a thing you do so a person can see your face if they happen to look up. I had my drafts open with 4 words in them that I'd written on Tuesday night, in a box room, sitting on a bed with my coat on. Better ones than last week. I'd worked at them. The florist picked up on the second ring. I know her voice better than my flatmates. I've never met her, and I've met my flatmate 4 times. And I said it. 12 stems, no lilies, signed with the initial, slowly, louder than a room that size requires. Every consonant on it, like a woman reading a verdict out to a court, and I heard myself doing it and I did not stop. Behind me, the scalpel. It didn't pause. Not on 12, not on no lilies, not on the 4 words I'd made on Tuesday and said out loud to a stranger on a Friday. A blade going through paper is a very small sound. You'd have to be listening for it. I was listening for it. And then I did something I've never done in that room. I put my elbow out, mid-sentence, and took the bone folder off the edge of the bench. That's a flat piece of bone you use to work a crease. It went on bare boards from a height of about 3 feet, and in a room with no carpet and no traffic and no third person in it, it is the loudest thing that has happened all year. I have not dropped one thing in 11 months. Not a tool, not a mug, not a sheet. I did it on purpose. I'd like to be clear about that, because I've had a long time to be embarrassed, and I've decided not to lie about any of it. She didn't look up. Not at me, not at the folder, not at the floor. The scalpel kept going, and the blade kept going, and a woman 2 meters behind me heard her own bone folder hit bare boards and did not raise her head 1 degree. I picked it up with the phone still against my ear and the florist still talking about delivery windows. And I finished the order. She read the message back to me, somebody else's mouth, my sentence, already in the past tense. Yeah, that's it. Then I hung up and turned round. She was working, head down, glasses on. The ones I clean, with a yellow cloth I bought for 90 pence, which neither of us has ever mentioned. 2 weeks ago she'd stopped. Hands flat either side of the work like she was holding it still. 4 seconds of looking at me, held past the point where either of us could call it accidental. Nothing last Friday either. I'd decided that 1 didn't count, because Foley had rung twice that morning about a courier and the room wasn't right. And I want you to notice what I was already doing. Building the exceptions in. Keeping the thing alive on a technicality. This week, nothing, and no exception available. And here's what I found out standing there, which I would rather not have found out about myself. A thing can happen once and not become a thing. I'd built 2 weeks on 4 seconds. I'd written a draft on a Tuesday night. I'd stood side on. I'd dropped a tool on the floor like a child putting her hand up, and what I had was 1 occurrence, and 1 occurrence is just weather. The phone went in my hand. 11:04. Your order has been received. I stood at the end of the bench with a dead phone and a live one, and read 6 words about 9 times. The humidity unit clicked on the wall. That's the unit that corrects itself every 11 minutes with a small mechanical sound, and in a quiet room you count them whether you want to or not. I got to 5 before either of us said anything. 5 clicks is 55 minutes. I sat down and put my finger on the corner of the paper, and she said, "Hold that flat," and I said, "Holding it flat," because I read things back. The following Tuesday, 2 hours out of the city, in a cold house where a man had died in March, and the family wanted to know what his books were worth. This is the job Foley booked before he left. Foley, the bookbinder, the other half of the studio, 51, currently in Portugal fixing his sister's roof. He put it in for a Tuesday in June, then moved it again, and then he got on a plane and it landed on the 2 of us. He books the 2-person valuations. He assigns himself the driving. He was not there. He is never there. He is the reason anything in my life has ever happened. So it was the two of us and about 900 books in a room that had had the heating off since March. The sheet on our bench came out of that house. 140 years old, up out of the cellar, sent to us in a box in the spring. We'd been mending it for a month and neither of us had ever once said out loud that we were about to stand in the room it came from. I want to tell you what a cold house does. It's not the temperature. It's that everything in it has the same temperature. The books, the shelves, the door frame, the cup somebody left. Nothing gives anything back. You put your hand on a thing, and your hand is the only warm object in the county. And I was going to be good that day. That was the plan. No bench, no lamp, no 2 feet of shared air. Just a job, done visibly and undeniably well, by a person who is worth her 9-month rolling contract. We worked separate walls for 2 hours. I called out titles and dates, and Harriet Byrne, the conservator, the woman I work for, wrote them down. Neither of us said an unnecessary word. It was fine. It was completely fine. Then I got to the 3rd volume of something Victorian, badly rebacked in the 50s by somebody's uncle, foxing right through. I opened it about a third in and turned 4 pages and stopped. Page 340. That's the dirt line. I've never explained this properly to anyone, so start at the back and work towards me. Last page of that book is clean, so is the page before it, and the 50 before that. Nobody's hand has ever been there. Then, going backwards, the gutter starts to darken. The gutter's the ditch, where 2 pages meet at the spine, and it takes whatever's in a person's fingers, over years, in proportion to how long a book sat open at that place. And there's 1 page where the dark starts. That's where he was. 340 is the cruelest number there is. A book like that is 360 pages long. He had 2 evenings left. Second time in my life I've found that number. I have never forgotten the first. I find it in about 4 seconds. I always do. It's the only interesting thing about me, and I have never said it out loud to a living person. I got as far as offering it once. In June, at 3:30 in the afternoon, with the paste going off, "Can I show you something stupid?" And she looked up, and she turned on the stool, shoulders following her head, and a kind man came up the stairs with sandwiches and 11 minutes of Suffolk before I could finish the sentence, and I never picked it back up. My hands stopped. That's all that happened. My hands stopped moving, over a book, in a cold room. What did you just do? She was behind me. I hadn't heard her cross the floor, and that floor was bare boards, which tells you something about how much attention I was paying to anything except a dead man's dirt. I turned round. She wasn't looking at the book. She was looking at my hands. 11 months of being furniture with hands. 11 months of a woman who looks at paper. And she'd been watching mine long enough to know what they do normally, and to notice when they stopped. "Nothing," I said. "Sorry. Wrong volume," and I put it in the wrong pile, on purpose. Left-hand stack, which was the catalog stack, so I'd have to come back for it and find it and handle it again. I did that with my face completely still, and I don't know who I was doing it for. Here's the arithmetic, while I'm giving you facts. That standing order has run 4 years without a missed week. I've checked, because I'm the calendar and I check. 44 of those weeks are mine now. There are 41 entries in that diary with Iris's name on them. Iris is Harriet's partner. 9 years. I typed most of them in myself. She didn't ask again. That's the thing about her. She asks once, exactly, like a contract with 1 clause, and then she lets you have your answer and holds you to it. We boxed books until 4. The light in that house went the color the studio always is. And at some point, without saying anything, she took her coat off and put it over my shoulders, and went back to the shelf, and carried on writing. Same Tuesday, 6:10, dark already. 2 hours of A road between that cold house and the studio, and I was in the passenger seat of a car that smelled of somebody else's air freshener. Harriet's car. Harriet Byrne, the conservator, the woman I work for, 38, sleeves buttoned at the wrist even in a cold house, vanilla, or the idea of vanilla, hanging off the mirror on a bit of card. She didn't choose that. I'd have put money on it. 2 hours. I want you to sit in that with me, because I'd been doing the sums since the hallway. 2 hours, no bench, no Foley coming up the stairs with sandwiches. Foley's the bookbinder, the other half of the studio, and he was in Portugal fixing his sister's roof, which is the only reason I was in that car at all. No third person, no paper going soft on a table, no reason to stop. 2 hours is enough for one real question. I'd been building it since 4 o'clock. In a dead man's hallway, boxing his books, with her coat over my shoulders because the heating had been off in that house since March. I still had the coat on. That's the thing I keep. She hadn't asked for it back. She'd put it on my shoulders without a word, and then gone to the shelf and carried on writing. And I'd worn it for 2 hours through a cold house, and got into her car still wearing it. It smelled of the studio. Wheat starch paste, which we cook fresh every morning in a small pan, and which gets into everything, and under that, dry paper, and under that, the cold. 40 minutes without speaking. That was fine. That's normal. I once did 6 hours holding a corner of a sheet flat for that woman, and said 9 words. Then the phone went. It was in the cup holder between us, face up, screen to the roof, and it lit the whole inside of that car the way a phone does in the dark. And she turned it over, one hand, eyes on the road, 2 fingers on the edge and face down into the cup holder, and she did not slow down, and she did not look, and she did not say anything. The light went out under it. I watched the edge of it for about a mile. 11 months that phone has lain face up on that bench. 9 hours a day, screen to the ceiling, because she has nothing to hide from anybody, and never has. And in a moving car, in the dark, at 60 miles an hour, she turned it over without looking. You don't do that for a road. You do that for a passenger. Then the headlights of a lorry came round a bend, and lit the whole inside of the car for about a second and a half, and I asked it, "Do you ever choose anything?" My voice was steady. It's always steady. If you'd been in the back seat, you'd have heard a junior conservator making conversation and gone back to sleep. She didn't answer straight away. 10 seconds, maybe. Long enough for me to start assembling the retreat. Sorry, ignore that. I'm knackered. The sentence I keep in my mouth at all times, the way other people keep keys in a pocket. I chose the work. That's all, at first. 4 words, flat as a bench. And then, everything after that got chosen for me. And I let it. I have never heard that woman say anything about herself. 11 months. She speaks in corrections and measurements. She signs a card with 1 letter because a whole name is a claim. And there it was, in the dark, at 60 miles an hour, with a bit of vanilla card swinging off the mirror and a phone face down between us. Both my hands went flat on my thighs. Because there's a door in that sentence. I let it. That's a woman describing the shape of her own cage from the inside, out loud, to me, and there is a next question. There are about 9 next questions. Let what? Chosen by who? What would you choose now? I had all of them, and she put the radio on. Not sharply. She didn't lunge for it. She reached out with the hand that wasn't on the wheel, and turned it on the way you'd turn on a lamp, and some man started talking about the roadworks on the westbound. Here's the part I'd like you to understand. A deflection you can come back to. If she'd said, "Don't be daft," or "Drive, Nell," I could have gone round again in a week. Deflection leaves a door on the latch. She answered me honestly and then closed it. You can't ask a question twice when it's already been answered. There's no version of that where I'm not a woman pushing. 90 minutes. 90 minutes of radio, and she did not turn it down once. Not for the ad break. Not when the signal went, about an hour in, and it was 4 minutes of nothing but hiss. She let the hiss run. She knew exactly what she'd done. That's the only conclusion available. A woman who corrects a 15-degree grip on a bone folder does not accidentally leave 4 minutes of static on. I looked out the window at nothing. Suffolk in the dark is a very good place to look at nothing. 7:30 at the studio. I took the coat off in the car park and gave it back, and she took it and said, "Thanks for today," and went up for her keys, still warm. And I got on the last bus with it on my lap, folded, for about 6 stops, before I worked out that I'd never put it on and it was not mine, and there was nobody to give it back to. Thursday, 11:30 in the morning. One bench, one lamp, and two people who had not discussed a car journey. 2 days. Nothing said. Not a word about Suffolk, or the coat, or the radio. I'd made a decision on that bus, and the decision was professional. That's a real word, and I meant it. I'd been sitting in a box room, 9 feet by 7, holding a coat that wasn't mine, and I thought, right. You're 25. You're a junior conservator on a 9-month rolling contract with 4 years of diploma left to pay. She is the woman you work for. Behave like it. I lasted until 11:30. Here's how the bench works, so you can see it. One lamp in the middle. Her side, my side. She works, I hold. The humidity unit on the wall corrects itself every 11 minutes with a small click, and in that silence you count them without deciding to. And her phone lies face up. 11 months. Screen to the ceiling, 9 hours a day, every day. I've watched that phone light up more times than I've watched anything. Except in the car. In the car she turned it over one-handed in the dark and did not look at it. At 11:30 it lit up on the bench, and she turned it over again. Not fast. She didn't snatch it. 2 fingers on the edge, one movement, the way you'd close a drawer in a house where somebody's asleep. She didn't read it first. She didn't need to. Neither did I. I book everything in that studio, and I have done since my 2nd week. The calendar, the post, the supply orders. I know whose name comes up on a Thursday morning. Iris. Harriet Burns' partner of 9 years. The one who works with children learning to walk again after the worst thing that's ever happened to them. I know she can't take codeine. I've got her date of birth off a form. I know the front door of that flat sticks in the wet, because I once had a courier hold for 40 minutes while I explained it. I know the flowers reached the hallway table by 2:30, and I sat there with my finger on the corner of a 140-year-old sheet of laid paper and understood what had happened to me. It had never been hidden, not once. For 11 months that screen faced the ceiling in front of me, and it faced the ceiling in front of nobody, because nobody was watching, because I was furniture with hands and there was nothing to hide from. You turn a phone over for a person. There was now a person. That's the direction of it, and the direction is not flattering. She hadn't hidden it from me to protect me. She'd hidden it from me because I was in the room. Every taste in my mouth went to the back of it, dry, the way it goes when you stand up too quickly. And the whole thing was made in the 2 seconds it took, which is slow enough to mean something, and fast enough that a person could say, "What?" My phone was face down, and, which is the other half of it. Because I couldn't ask. There's no way to ask that doesn't end with me explaining how I know it's normally the other way up. That sentence has my last 11 months in it. Every morning early. Every 2 feet of air. You cannot ask a question that confesses. So I said nothing. I cleaned her glasses at lunch with a yellow cloth I bought at the chemist for 90 pence, which is a thing neither of us has ever mentioned out loud. And at 6 o'clock I went first. That's new. In 11 months I have never once left that building before Harriet Byrne. I get in 22 minutes early and I go home last, and that is the entire shape of my working life. I got my coat and I said goodnight and I went down. 2 flights, and the street door in front of me, and behind me and above me the phone lit up again. You can hear it. That bench is oak, and the buzz goes through the boards and down the stairwell. Once, then again. And I stood on the bottom step with my hand on the door and listened to a phone I could not see, in a room I had just left, ringing for somebody who wasn't going to pick it up in front of me. Friday, 5 to 11, and for the first time in 3 weeks, she put the scalpel down before I'd asked her anything. I had the phone in my hand and the florist's number up. Same as always. Every Friday, 11 o'clock, entered in the calendar in my 2nd week. 12 stems, no lilies, signed with the initial. They go to Iris. Harriet Burns' partner of 9 years, the one who teaches children to walk again. Flowers reach the hallway table by 2:30, and for 3 weeks the message has been mine. Harriet stopped dictating it. You know what to put, mid-cut, without looking up, and she handed me 4 words a week of another woman's tenderness the way you'd hand somebody a bag while you find your keys. I'd already started saying it, mess. And she put the scalpel down, not dropped, set. blade parallel to the edge of the bench, which is how everything gets put down in that room. Then she pulled a job sheet across and turned it over and took a pencil off the shelf behind her. And I heard it before I saw it. Rubber on paper. That's a sound like nothing else. A dry drag, and it went right to left and then stopped, and then she blew the crumbs off the sheet. I hadn't seen what was on it. I only knew that a woman who does not correct herself had just corrected herself. Wrote it again. Same sound. Right to left. Blew the crumbs off. The humidity unit clicked on the wall. That's the unit that corrects itself every 11 minutes with a small mechanical sound, and I counted it, because I count. Third time she didn't rub it out. She tore the corner off the sheet along the edge of the bench. One clean pull, the way she does everything, and she put it face down on the bench, at the halfway line, under the lamp, and picked the scalpel back up. So I had to reach over and turn it over myself. I'd like you to understand what that costs. If she hands it to me, it's a transaction, and transactions happen between colleagues. If it lies face down on the halfway line, then I am a woman reaching across a bench to turn a thing over, on my own, in front of her, with my whole arm out. I turned it over. It was my sentence. The 4 words I made 3 weeks ago, standing at that same end of that same bench, on a Friday, on the phone to a florist I've never met, inventing tenderness for a woman I'd met 4 times. I said them once, out loud, to a stranger. They went on a small card in a van and across the city to a hallway table, and I deleted the draft while the florist was still confirming the address. Thumb, hold, delete. Not a decision. Closer to putting your hand off a hot thing. There was no copy. There has never been a copy. She'd been carrying them for 3 weeks. And now they were in front of me in pencil, in her handwriting, twice erased. My hand went completely still, not shaking. The opposite. Still the way a thing is still when you're holding it too carefully. The paper was warm on one side. Here's the arithmetic. Because arithmetic is easier. 2 erasures. That means she wrote them, looked at them, decided they weren't right, and wrote them again, twice. She was checking my words against her memory of my words. She had a version in her head to check them against. You don't keep 4 words for 3 weeks by accident. I know exactly how that works. I'm the one who keeps things. She said nothing. The blade went back to the paper. I could have said it. Those are mine. 2 words, true, 1 second. But then one of us has to admit whose they are, and the other has to admit she kept them. There is no version of that conversation where we can both sit at that bench afterwards. So I turned round and rang the florist. 12 stems, no lilies, signed with the initial, and then my own 4 words. Read off a piece of paper, in a voice with nothing in it. 11:04. Your order has been received. And then I did the only clean thing I did all summer. The bin's under the sink at the end of the bench. Pedal bin, metal, and the lid comes down hard, because the hinge is stiff. I put the corner of the job sheet in it. Her handwriting, my words, twice erased. In the bin, at 11:30 on a Friday, 4 feet from where she was working. I did it so she'd hear the lid. She heard the lid, and I stood there with my foot still on the pedal, and the lid up, and my hand still down inside a bin, looking at a piece of paper I had already let go of. The following Wednesday, 1:10, and there were footsteps on the studio stairs that weren't Foley's. Foley's the bookbinder, the other half of the studio, 51, deaf in the left ear. He was in Portugal fixing his sister's roof, and had been for 3 weeks. So nobody comes up those stairs. Nobody had come up those stairs since June. Harriet heard it before I did. She was already looking at the top of the stairwell. And it was Iris, Harriet Burns' partner, 9 years, 40, and she works with children who are learning to walk again after the worst thing that's ever happened to them. Carrying a paper bag with the top rolled over. I'd met her 4 times. One of them was the birthday card, and that was through the post. Sorry, don't get up, I'm not staying. She was up those stairs and across that room in about 4 seconds, and she put the bag on the bench in a place where there was nothing to damage, which I noticed, because I noticed things about that bench. She'd brought lunch. For 3. She didn't know Foley was away. Nobody had told her, because the person who tells her things is the person who works 2 feet from me, and she hadn't. Oh, is he not? Oh, well, someone can have two. And then she took out a sandwich and put it in front of me, the one with the pickle. Now, I've never said that out loud. Not to Foley, not to Harriet, not to anybody in that building or any other. It's a thing so small there's no occasion on which a person would say it. 4 weeks ago, Harriet slid one across the bench without looking up, and I opened my mouth to ask how she knew, and never did. And here it was, coming out of a paper bag, in another woman's hands. Harriet said. She said you like that one, cheerful, delighted with herself, the way you are when you've remembered something for somebody. I said, thanks, that's really kind. I meant one of those 2 words. Here's what I understood, sitting there. At some point, in a kitchen, in a flat with a front door that sticks in the wet, Harriet Burns said out loud to her partner of 9 years, Nell likes the pickle one. It went in the household. It came back up the stairs as a kindness. The one thing I had that was between 2 people at one bench turned out to have been conversation. Everything in my mouth went flat. The bread had no taste in it at all, and I ate the whole thing. 19 minutes. She sat on Foley's stool and talked. She's funny. That's the thing I can't get round. She's genuinely funny, and she's warm. And she asked me about the Suffolk job, properly, and listened to the answer. She called me our Nell, without irony, twice. And Harriet watched me the whole time. Not her, me. Iris saw it. I know she did, because she caught it, and she smiled about it, and I could see exactly what she was reading. Look at the 2 of them. Look how she is about the girl. She's not so bad. And she was pleased. She was pleased. Then she stood up and said she had a 4 o'clock, and apologized again for interrupting. And on the way past, she put her hand on Harriet's shoulder. Just put it there. Didn't look. Didn't pause. The way you do a thing you've done 4,000 times, in a body you've had access to for 9 years, with no ring and no paperwork, and nothing that could ever be voided on a technicality. 9 years. That's the whole cage. There's no loophole in it. Her footsteps went down 2 floors and the door went at the bottom, and the room was unbearable. I can't give you better than that. Something in it had changed weight, and neither of us could name it, and neither of us tried. Harriet picked up the scalpel. I put my finger on the corner of the sheet. We worked until 9. Nobody put music on. Nobody suggested it. The next night, 3:47 in the morning, the humidity alarm going, and both of us in yesterday's clothes with a 140-year-old sheet of laid paper going soft on the bench between us. The alarm's Foley's fault. He wired it into the old humidity unit before he left, the bookbinder, the other half of the studio, 51, in Portugal fixing his sister's roof, and he gave out exactly 2 keys, hers and mine, so when it goes at 2:30 in the morning, there are 2 people in the world who can answer it, and both of them come. I got there first, 12 minutes first. I'd like that on the record. The paper was already wrong. You could see it from the door. Humidity had come up on that room, and the sheet had gone soft the way skin goes soft in a bath, and you cannot leave paper like that. It has to be brought back down slowly, with something holding it flat, and it's a 2-handed job done by one person. One works, one holds. She came up the stairs in a coat over a jumper, and no comment about the hour. Harriet Byrne, the conservator, the woman I work for, she'd come from that flat. The one with the front door that sticks in the wet, where Iris is, her partner of 9 years, asleep, at 3:30, on a Thursday. I didn't think about that at the time. I want to be honest that I didn't. I thought about it later, for weeks. We worked. 40 minutes without a word, which is nothing for us. I've done 6 hours at that bench and said 9 words. Blotter, weights, the lamp turned down because the lamp puts heat in, then the corner started lifting. Bottom left, it goes when the fiber's wet. It wants to curl, and if it curls it tears along its own grain, and then you've got 140 years in 2 pieces on a Thursday morning. Hold it. I put my finger on it. Not like that. And her hand came over mine, palm across my knuckles, fingers underneath, finding the corner, moving my finger about half an inch and flattening it. Marble in an unheated church. That's her hands, always, and I have never worked out whether that's the room or the woman. But that morning it was the difference I felt. Because I'd been asleep 40 minutes earlier, and I'd run for a bus that doesn't exist at that hour, and walked instead, and I was still carrying all of that in me, and her hand came down on it like the flat of a cold knife. 3 seconds of instruction. Then nothing. I counted. I always count. And I know the number, and the number is 7. 7 seconds. The correction was finished at 3. The corner was flat. Her hand had no reason to still be on my knuckles at 4. At 5. At 6. At 7. She has done that to me twice. Once in June, over a bone folder, at 20 past 8 in the morning. Once at 10 to 4 in the morning over a wet corner. 3 seconds and 4 seconds, both times, and I counted both times, and I have never once mentioned that either. Neither of us moved. I could smell the paste. That's the wheat starch we cook fresh every morning, and by 2:30 in the morning it's long dead, and what was in that room was the previous day's. Gone off. Sweet in the wrong way. I hadn't slept. That's my defense. That's the entire defense I've got, and I've had a long time to build a better one, and there isn't one. Harriet. I said it out loud. 11 months of Ms. Byrne. 2 words, like a doorframe. You can stand in it, you can't go through. And I'd stood in it every working day since the previous September. And I said her name at 10 to 4 in the morning, with her hand on my hand. The room did nothing. The alarm had stopped. The unit clicked on the wall, correcting itself, the way it does every 11 minutes. She didn't pretend. That's the thing. There's a version where a woman says, "Sorry, what?" and you both agree nothing happened. It costs nobody anything. I've been let off that way 100 times. She took her hand back, slowly. The way you set down something wet. Both of those things, the slowness and the care, and she did not look at where it landed, not once. Her eyes stayed on the paper. Go home, Nell. And here's what I understood. Standing at that bench, and it took about a second and a half. That is not a rejection. A rejection is, what are you doing? A rejection is confusion, or a laugh, or a woman asking why you've suddenly used her first name. She answered something I hadn't asked. You only say go home to a person you've worked out you can't be alone with. Which means there is a line. Which means she's been standing on her side of it, holding it, with her sleeves buttoned at the wrist, for God knows how long. A line has 2 sides. That's what a line is. I said, the paper. I'll finish it. So I got my coat. Saturday, 2 in the afternoon, a cafe Iris picked, and she was already there when I arrived, which never happens. Iris. Harriet Byrne's partner of 9 years, 40, works with children learning to walk again, and the only person in this city who has ever posted me anything with a stamp on it. She'd texted Thursday night, "Are you free Saturday?" Nothing bad, with 2 exclamation marks on the end. I had 41 hours to work out what it was. I'd like to tell you I spent them on the paper, or on sleep, or on anything a functioning adult does with 41 hours. What I actually did was walk from the bus stop to that cafe constructing the sentence I'd say when she told me she knew. Because there's no innocent reason. That's what I had. A woman does not take her partner's assistant for coffee on a Saturday. She stood up when she saw me, hugged me. Sorry, I'm being weird. Sit down. She had a cup in front of her she hadn't touched, both hands round it, turning it a quarter turn at a time on the saucer. She's not a nervous person. I've met her 5 times now, and she is not a nervous person. Right, she said. Okay. I'm going to ask her to marry me. And everything I'd built on the walk from the bus stop went out of me at once, and what came up in its place was nothing at all. No feeling. Just the sound of the coffee machine and somebody's chair going back behind me. 4 months, she said. She's been planning it 4 months. She had dates. She had a place picked, and a second place in case of rain, and she'd checked the diary for that week. My diary. The one I keep, because I'm the calendar and the post and the supply orders, and have been since my 2nd week. She'd been reading my diary to plan it. I said, "That's Iris, That's wonderful. With my face. Out loud. And I want to be accurate. I meant it. That's the part nobody believes. It is wonderful. She's lovely. She has done nothing wrong in her entire life. Then she said the thing. I need you to help me choose the ring. I didn't say anything. Because nobody knows her like you do. She said it kindly. She said it the way you hand somebody a compliment you've been saving, and she believed every word of it, and it is true. I know that woman's hands better than anybody alive. 11 months at 2 feet. I've watched them correct a grip by 15 degrees. I've watched them go cold as marble in an unheated house in Suffolk. I could pick that ring in 4 minutes and I would get it right. That's the horror. Not that I can't. That I can. Iris got a napkin off the stack and wrote the size on it in biro, and a little heart after the number, because she couldn't help herself. She slid it across the table. And I looked at it, and I opened my mouth to read it back, because that's what I do. 12 stems, no lilies, signed with the initial. 46 Fridays running. Every instruction anybody has ever given me, checked, repeated, receipted. And the number would not come out. Nothing came out. My mouth was open and there was no air behind it. She reached over and put her hand on my wrist. I know. I'm so glad it's you. She thought I was moved. She said thank you about 6 times. I counted. 6. Over 20 minutes, while she talked about the weather in October and whether Harriet would want people there. I sat in it. Then I was outside on the pavement in the sun, and the napkin was in my coat pocket, folded small, and I got to the bus stop and sat down. And I already knew the number. I hadn't tried to. I'd looked at it for about 1.5 seconds, and it had gone in, and it was not coming out again. That's what I do. It's the whole of me. I know Iris can't take codeine. I know her date of birth off a form. I know that front door sticks in the wet. And now I know what size her hand is. I sat on that bench and I tried to say it out loud. Just the number. Nobody there. A woman on her own at a bus stop on a Saturday, saying a number to nothing, and my mouth wouldn't do it. I tried again when the bus came, and when I got off, and once more at the top of my own stairs, with my key in the door, and nobody in the flat, and nobody in 6 miles who could have heard me. I still can't say it.